Hey everyone! Hope you can see me. I don't know if this is a new thing with Instagram that it always blacks out for a second and then gets started. But I guess it is what it is. Let me know in the comments though if you guys experience when you go live you get a black screen because I find it weird when I get a black screen. Anyway, so let's get started. Welcome everyone to On the Flip Side. Every Monday, I'm hosting an episode every first Monday of the month. We talk about any topic in mindset. And every other Monday after that, it's anything in real estate. So today we have Ping Hsu on, and I am your host, Diana Lizarazo. Now, before we get started, I wanted to share some exciting news with you. I have an application that I've created for you all, and it's an application that is actually going to be transforming the way we work in real estate. It solves two major issues in the industry that it's very important. I think it's going to be, or it will be, it's transforming the way we work. So if you guys are interested in knowing more about it, I'll be adding it. It's in my bio, but I'll also add it into the comments later on or in the description later on for you guys to check it out. So now let's get on to the show. So on the flip side, we have people interested in the real estate investing world, in the industry, and they will be talking to us about any topic in real estate. So let's get Ping on. Let's send him some hearts. Let's send him thumbs up so we can figure out what is the topic today. And I think you guys are going to be excited about it. So let's send him some hearts and let me get him on. Let's see here. Hey, Ethan, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So what is our topic for today? What are we talking about today?
You know what? We can talk about mindset. We can talk about some recent projects that we're doing. We can talk about some business model that we have actually been implementing in the past couple of years. Honestly, I'll leave that to you to lead the conversation. But yeah, I got all the.
Okay, so let's start with first, Ping, tell us who you are, what you do, what's your strategy, how long you've been in it. Let's get to know you
Okay,
first.
sounds good. So very quickly, I actually started investing, well, getting my very first property back in 2010. It was a student rental, value at 4 bedroom, and then I was able to actually utilize my family's resource to actually acquire my very first property. My mom was literally my very first mentor, leading me into the real estate investing world at the age of 18 years old, engineering student. So that's kind of how I started. And then fast forward, I was able to acquire one property at every single year up until 2015. And I told my parents that, hey, listen, I wanted to start things out with a business partner, and his name is Andrew. Has extensive renovation background and then running a construction company. So I wanted to actually start a different journey with a business partner, and that's what my family told me that, okay, if you want to do that, there's no problem, but just know that everything has to be separated and into like family and business needs to be completely separated. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. And the immediate question that I had is income problem, right? I was working for a full-time job in an engineering firm, and I wanted to adapt into full-time real estate. Very first thing, very first question is that, hey, the cash flow coming from the student rental is just not sustainable. Okay, at least not for my lifestyle, and I also need to replace my income. So I had an income problem that I need to solve at the time. Okay, and from
Mhm.
there, we were looking around different business opportunities. We're doing some flips, and we also ended up opening up a property management firm in Hamilton.
A private
Fast
what, sorry?
property management firm.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're doing flipping, we're doing property management, and all that stuff kind of like set up the foundation for the future. 2017, we started acquiring our multifamily buildings. 2018, we launched the sales team, and at the end of 2018, early 2019, we started launching more like a flipping business and use that to kind of sustain our cash flow of the business. So there's a lot of pivotal moment for our business to keep drawing the business, the active income for the business as we're investing in real estate. Because the things that we learned is that investing in real estate, as much as it's good for long term, we're all cash poor as an investor. So I like the idea of trying to figure out how to draw active income while I'm doing the passive, taking the passive approach.
Awesome. And I think that's actually a great topic for today is how can we monetize as real estate investors, I think is a perfect topic for today, especially in this environment, right? Things are changing. The fear is really there for a lot of us. And so what kind of changes or tips would you like to give to the audience to help them with this environment that we're in?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think, and I want to give a very, I want to be careful with my answer because depending on what everyone's risk tolerance and their financial resource, the approach will be a lot different. Okay, so let me kind of break it down a little bit with my thought process. Number one is if someone is at their current job and they were like, okay, listen, like my current job is not drawing enough income, or because of the interest rate that's going up, I'm just not able to actually even pay for. I feel like very financially heavy on paying for the mortgage and all that stuff. Investing is a little too early at this moment because even if you have 50K, 100K at, let's say, 20% ROI, okay, that will only give you 20,000 or 10 to 20,000 a year. If you divide that by 12 months, you're getting less than 1,000, right? If you're on the 10K side. So for people like that fall into that category, I think it's time to figure out a side hustle for you. Okay, I don't think investing is the right move because you're going to spend or exhaust all of your financial resource, and just to get a very little return at the end of the year, and there's still risk involved. So I think keeping the cash high, learn a new income skill, and then use that to monetize in this field, I think is the number one thing that you want to do. Because the truth is, if you can actually figure out, giving you an example, lead generation, okay, for investor, finding a deal to wholesale, or another thing, it could be a client that you can refer to, insurance agent, mortgage agent, realtors. The referral fee that you get to make is way more than the investment return you can ever ask for. Okay, so if you fall into that category, you gotta be a little bit active, right? Kind of like what I had to go through back in 2015, 2016, why I needed to replace my income. Now, if you're in the position where you have a full-time job, you're comfortable, and you're like, hey, I got like 100, 150K. In today's environment, private lending is not a bad thing. Okay, lending out for 12 to 15%. If you can partner up with a seasoned investor that doesn't interfere with your daily operation, that approach will get you into real estate pretty quickly. You get to learn the industry inside out with that partner, and you get a pretty good return, 12 to 15% plus the lender fee. And it's completely passive, right? So that would be good. Now, if you're in the category where you're like, okay, I'm running a decent business, I'm drawing enough cash flow. Cash flow is not my big thing. Now, there's multiple different avenues that you can look into. Multifamily is one of them, depending on how passive or how active you want to be. The value add project that you want to get in, I think right now is the first time ever that we can actually turn one single family into full-plex with a garden suite in the back or laneway housing in the back. You can test something out, right? Because at the end of the day, right now, even though interest rate is high, if we can kind of play around with the regulation, right, which is something that we're finally allowed to do, buy in low, right, still need to find a really good deal. Do a lot of value add approach to that specific property, and you can make quite a bit of equity by the time you finish the project.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. And what would you say, because I don't know, because you talked about active investor, but what about for those that are completely new at investing? What advice would you give for them?
You gotta invest in the education first, right? And the reason why I say that isn't really because I feel like everybody needs it. I think the information you can always get it on YouTube on for example a live like this where we're just talking about some different strategy. I think information is all free, but in order for you to fast track that progress where you're only taking the information that's relevant to you, I think that's where you can really speed things up. Okay, I like to leverage seasoned investor or seasoned business owners' perspective by compensating for their expertise because they get to review my whole portfolio or even my current resource, right? And then and tell me exactly what I need to do for the next 2 to 3 months. Once I get that perspective, I just need to focus on implementing it because Beginner investor, the biggest issue is that they over-evaluate the information side and they underestimate the action. Okay, so they gather so much information but take very little action. If you look at more seasoned investor or business owner, or I should call that a successful entrepreneur, they do the exact opposite. They have a very little information that they make a decision, but they make it quick and they take tons of action. Because the moment that they realize that it's in the wrong direction, they can always pivot, right? So like a beginner investor, the biggest issue is always information overloaded, right? You either process that or filter that out yourself. If you're unable to do that, hire a coach, hire someone that's in the industry long term that has done what you're hoping to do in the next couple of years. Ask them to give you the tips that will help you really accelerate the whole progress.
I agree with you completely, especially when it comes to, because basically what you're saying is, which I think is that always happens, I feel like it happened to me, is making the decision also even and sticking to one strategy. You know, it's really funny, for me, there's one strategy that I really, really liked, and I felt like it went really well with at the time because I was working, and then I did want to get into real estate, and I felt like, you know, there's a strategy that really worked for me, but I think tried every single strategy out. That being said, I came with already working for so many years, so I had a good amount of money, so I could do it. But I feel like if you're especially talking about like the younger investors in their 20s where they haven't like built up their cash, you know, I feel like your approach is exactly what it should be, right? Just pick one thing with it, like make sure it makes sense to your lifestyle. Pick that one thing, and like you said, go to a mentor, whatever that means to you, but someone that's in it, doing it, and just like you said, getting it done with them, because it's almost like you're having a problem of making a decision. You know, it's like you're saying you're getting all this information, but it's like just make the decision and go, because you're right. It's like once you make the decision, you go, for example, you see like, oh, a little failure, right? Okay, now divert back, like keep on going, like figure out like a solution for that and keep on going. Or, you know, maybe find out after some time that isn't for you or something, fine, but at least like you're going in one direction. Because I did like a split of like, I don't know, I think I did like every single strategy possible or something.
Yeah.
It still ended up working out for me, but I think it was more because I had a lot of money that I could kind of play around with, that it was able to work. But I feel like especially like that for those new people that are like very young, if you don't have the cash, like you do have to be, I feel like, very focused, because even I feel like if you don't like a strategy, or I mean like be able to do the proper, like have someone help you define with time, because you also said this basically, right? With time that you have and money that you have, right? Finding, okay, now which strategies meet those criteria to be able to move forward and stick with it, because there's always going to be the tough times, right? Where it's like you're going to be annoyed or hate it or whatever, but you get through it and like they keep on going, because at least once you know a solid strategy, I feel like going into others are not so bad if you do want to go into it, right?
Exactly. And for younger people who don't have a lot of cash, right, you do need to take the active approach. You need to have an exit strategy for every single project that you're getting into. Or if you're not even in the position to get into one project, two things that you can learn. One is finding the right deal, because you can literally hand that deal over to another investor and make an assignment fee, right? Quick like that. But it gives them an opportunity to increase that cash reserve. Now, the second thing is you might consider looking around your network, family, friends, colleagues, and see if you can actually raise capital. It's totally okay to jump into one project with other partners, because now you're not being restricted with your own resource at that specific moment. And last thing, like what you just mentioned, not knowing, or like you and I, we've tried so many different strategies on our own, right? Having a mentor, having a coach, or really experienced real estate professionals, could be a realtor, could be your mortgage broker, they can literally guide you through on exactly what you need to do right now, and just keep you focused on that one strategy in that specific market, right?
Although let me tell you, I had coaches,
Oh yeah,
but I still decided to do too many things. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm very stubborn, you know. I don't know. I think that was more my fault. I can't say I can blame the mentors for that, because they were like, they told me, and I was like, yeah, okay, let me do this too, you know?
yeah. No. Here's the thing: the shiny objects syndromes always happens to I guess a serial entrepreneur, right? Because we're like, we want to try that, we want to give it a try, and then eventually we pivot back. But that's a classic example of us taking tons of action, right? We need to take a lot of action, because even if we fail in that specific approach, we will learn how to adapt. The worst part is a lot of new investors, they've been waiting since, for example, 2017, 2018. When the market started going up, they were like, there's a lot of risk, right? And then every single year they have a different excuses,
Yeah.
right? So
You know
they,
what's my favorite? They're like, oh my God, the market's going down. I can't.
yeah,
I can't because I'm gonna lose money. Oh my God, the market's going up. I can't. I can't because now I'm at the top of the market. I'm like, guys, it's never gonna be good for you.
yeah, no, it's not going to be perfect, and that's why we need to embrace that there's going to be uncertainty, right? But the moment that you're actually taking action, learning those mistakes or learning those pivotal moments with other investors, that's truly how you learn quickly, right? So, like, I don't. By the way, like that's why I mean what I mean by that is that not to get distracted is one thing, but also not being able to take action is extremely important in the investing world, because there's just so many different approaches in real estate investing.
Yeah, that decision, just make it and you figure it out. You just make the decision and then it's like, how do I get it done? Basically is
Yeah,
what happens.
yeah. The information is all you need. Don't shoot for perfection.
Yeah.
It's never gonna be.
Yeah, perfection is bad. That's actually one of my problems. That's what actually made me get a mentor actually, was because I'm an overlearner. I'm like an overly calculating, like I need to know everything about everything to get into anything. But it was funny because I knew so much, but I still didn't have like the confidence to make the push forward because I was always like, what if?
Yeah.
What if, you know? And then I was just like, you know what, if I have a mentor beside me to help to just and literally it was funny because he barely like I would just be like, oh, I'm doing this. He's like, yeah, it's a good idea. I'm like, I'm not missing anything. He's like, no, it was like literally, it's just like that confident booster in my sense because I knew way too much than I needed to know. But he was just like, for me, I think for those people that have analysis paralysis, which was definitely me, um, like having that mentor just kind of gives you that second like confidence where you just tell them and they're like, yeah, yeah, that's good. And then, you're like, oh, really? And then it just like, to be honest, it made me run faster because having that person just gives you that confidence. What was it for you? Like, did you start off with the mentor from the beginning
Yeah.
or how was it the feeling for you to get into things?
My very first mentor is my mom, right? At the age of 18, I didn't think being a landlord was sexy or anything. I actually thought it was pretty annoying that I had to be washing out the renovation, and some of the stuff I need to clean up the job site. I need to actually go out on the street to talk to students who are looking for, because at that time, there was no Facebook Marketplace. It was all Kijiji and actually just a for rent site, right? So I was literally going out of my student rental and look for people who are looking around the September or the end of August time, and then get people into the door and just be, hey, have a look at my basement units or whatever, right? So I thought it was a lot of work without a lot of rewards, right? Didn't really understand the real estate investing side. But my mom just told me that, listen, she actually sent me down, by the way, before my very first property. She sent me down, she wrote 20 on the paper, and then she's like, Ping, listen, that's your goal. I'm like, what does that even mean? She's like, 20, you need to have 20 tenants paying you rent by the time you graduate. Okay, put that as your goal. And then I'm like, okay, I'll try. Like, I guess I can do it. And then anyway, so we sit down. She walked me through the whole thing. That's the very first time I learned BRRRR strategy. But we didn't call that BRRRR at the time. We called that leverage properly. That is
Yeah.
the equity, right? Once you have the value add, then you can move on to the next one. But at the time, even BRRRR strategy takes 1 to 2 years. It didn't take 3 4 months after you finish the renovation because the market was flat, right? So that's also another thing that I learned, that every different market cycle, the strategy that we use needs to be different, right? BRRRR strategy pretty well between 2016 to 2017 was pretty good, and then there was a little dip, and then 2018 all the way to 2021 it was very good. But right now, if you're implementing the same strategy, don't expect that you can pull back the down payment plus renovation within 6 months. Now you're looking at 2 year timeline. Okay, so
Yeah.
so yeah, to answer your question, number one is my mom. Another mentor, and more than happy to actually just tell people who he is. Matthew Frederick, 2015, I actually signed up with him when I didn't have a lot of money. I actually had to make a payment plan. Every paycheck that I received, I pay over to him so that I could literally sit with him, learn through multiple different projects, and then have him explain to me exactly what he's thinking through. And that was an eye-opening for me, right? So 2015, I had that mentor like kind of walk me through. 2016, 2017 was a business mentor, and then about afterwards, I never actually stopped paying for mentor because it's just fast everything we do.
Completely agree with you. I think once you're in, right? It's just like you just see how quickly you can improve with a mentor on your side. Whereas like that, once you're evolving and changing, the same thing. I have like a business mentor too, just because I'm more into the business side of things. I'm very interested, which I know you are too. And
Yeah.
it's just like if someone can just push me forward and just tell me how to do things, or just point me in the right direction, it just makes your life so much easier and you just move so much quicker.
Yeah, because and the way I interpreted the mentorship is very simple. It's like we can all learn everything on our own. It can take 10 months, it can take 5 months, it can take 1 year or whatever, right? But what if we have someone who can literally tell us, hey, stop getting distracted, do this exact same thing. And we just focus on implementation the next 2 to 4 weeks. Then all the time that we saved from that trial and error, right, for an additional, let's say, 6 months versus 1 month, we get to monetize almost immediately. So we don't end up losing that 6 months of a period where we are not able to move because we're trying to learn, right? So hiring
100%.
work and hiring the right talent on the team, those two are extremely important to me in the current stage of my business.
100%. Completely agree. And now getting back to the market, and I'm just curious on your thoughts because like that, like, during COVID time, during when things were really good, the way the strategies were very different. What advice do you give people now? Like, what are the changes I would say that you see going into the environment we're in now
Okay.
for investors to get in?
Yeah, so one thing that I always kind of joke around with my team is that do things that they're exactly opposite from what everybody else is doing. Okay, 9 out of 10 times you will be right. And the reason why I say that is I'm gonna like just talk about a couple of my stories. Back in 2020, was it 20? Yeah, 2020. People were telling us not to touch any retail commercial real estate or office real estate because most of these business or companies are going out of business. And I'm like, okay, I agree. I can see why the pandemic is going to like really have that kind of effect. But the moment that I start seeing commercial property dropping from $2 million, 1.8 down to 1.5, 1.3, 1.2, I'm like, I don't think I can ever grab the same type of property, let's say 2 or 3 years from now, right? Because it almost hit the same price point as any other residential property. So 2020, when everybody's saying that don't touch that, I explored that option and we picked up 3 commercial properties. And within 10 or 12 months, we were able to really pull out tons of equity out of those properties. And the property valuation was on average was 800K, right? And I'm not saying this to brag about this. It's just the opportunity that we saw. 2021, there's the biggest opportunity was in our opinion, was in student rental because we're seeing some motivated seller, like the owners for that own student rentals that want to kind of offload their properties. We saw properties went from 700 all the way to 500 near McMaster University, right? Because campus was closed, right? So I could understand, and everybody was talking about it's going to change the way that we learn in North America. I'm like, I question that because there's a football season, there's a lot of like a college experience that nobody will ever want to do that virtually and stay at home, right? So we picked out a few student rentals, and obviously those were doing much better. Even right now, the equity buildup is still much higher compared to like 500K at the time. So going to 2022 is the only season that I would say we all need to be super careful because the market was still shifting, right? Interest rate was still going up. That's where you want to kind of keep your cash reserve as high as possible. Now, going into 2023, we're almost at the end of the rate hike. There's a couple of things that we can do. Number one is if you really look at the current market and current demand, everybody's going for multifamily buildings. Okay, so one of the two
I
things.
know where you're going with this, and in the
Yeah.
same boat as you.
So one of the two things I would do, and I'm just sharing my experience. Number one is if I see there's a more and more hype on multifamily buildings, multifamily purchase, I'm gonna be thinking about offloading some of my buildings. That's number one. Number two is I might try to use my skill set, which is finding the right deal, negotiating, because I've been like doing this for multiple different asset class. You can do this, get something locked under contract and sell it back to some community like World Genius, right? Some other communities where they're really hyper promoting multifamily buildings and sell those buildings back to them, right? And make that a assignment fee, because in today's market, I still firmly believe that real estate, as much as it's a long term, there has to be a mix of long term strategy and short term strategy. Okay, and right now, if you really think about it, not a lot of people are talking about flipping model, and flipping model can really mean multiple different things. Could mean flipping business, flipping properties. It could be flipping contract. It could be flipping permits, right? So it all depends on how you want to position yourself. If you can keep your cost as low as possible, grab something that's actually low, right? You do a quick value add and sell it back to the target audience that are obviously looking for this type of audience. This is where you can actually make quick money. And my firm belief in today's market is try to earn that active income as much as possible. Forget about investing. I think investing comes with you having a lot of cash reserve. Now you can play your I guess capital in the right place.
Yeah, I agree with you actually. And it's very interesting you said, because a lot of people I've spoken to, they do say that now it's become a lot to do with cash flow, actually, that they want whatever it is, like in their businesses or in their real estate, like they're very cash flow focused,
Yeah.
because there are lots of people that invested and they were maybe break even or already under, like they weren't making money, not underwater, but they weren't making money. But as interest rates go up, it's become even worse for them. So now it's like a lot of people are in a looking for cash flow. But even still, like I completely
No,
agree with you, because I'm
right.
also in a position where cash flow, well, it's not true. I've started a business more than I would say. Actually, I would say it's not really generating cash flow for me yet, but the plan is for it to do that. But I feel like right now is a good time, or at least I'm seeing a lot of people right now. It's like right now is like a time to, it's like if anything, like build businesses is what I'm seeing. Like,
Yeah.
um, are you seeing that too?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely seeing that, because a lot of people right now, when it comes to investing, they're scared because of the interest rate, right? And the truth is, if you do look at all the properties right now, none of them cash flow, including multifamily, like up until like 6 or 8 units, they don't cash flow too well, right? And it's literally because now you're looking at the interest rate being at 7 or 8%, and you're hoping to get a CMHC, the different type of commercial mortgage. But the wait time right now is also 8 months out, right? So you're not going to get a lot of cash flow. So cash flow play right now to me is not the most important thing. I wanted to play the equity play, right? So whatever I'm doing, that's why I emphasize a lot of like active investing approach, because you're playing with the equity. If you buy something really low, even though that property will not cash flow, but you can do wholesaling, hoteling, or you can like flip that property with a bare minimum renovation, right? You just fix that up and then you cash out by selling that product back to the market.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not banking your exit strategy on bear method. And I also don't believe in refinancing at the current market, because you're
Yeah.
holding that capital out at 7 or 8%, unless you have another income producing asset that you can allocate those funds. That money is not yours; it's bank's money, right? So mix of everything all together. I just feel like right now the best strategy is everybody just need to understand that investing in today's market is not passive at all. So if it's not passive, let's make it active. Let's make the most money in the active approach, right? And then go in and out if you can, cash out if you can. Just make sure you budget 1 to 2 years timeline for you to pay for the negative cash flow, and over time you're gonna make money.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. Yeah, it is very important. Yeah, I agree with you. Although, actually, curious on your opinion of it, because like basically flipping in whichever way, you know, or though actually I think you just said it now that I think of it. Because either you're flipping, but you still, I feel like having multiple exit strategies are so important right now because you may not be able to flip it. You know, you get it, and yes, it may be an amazing deal, but maybe no one's buying because, I mean, materials are still expensive. You know, I mean, the margins aren't really there for people to make it work with whatever they
Yeah.
have.
So, by the way, this is a little framework for everybody who's listening, right? I started learning this framework actually back when I was attending Rich and Poor Dad. Matthew talked about this. There's multiple different groups that's talking about this right now. That's called the SMP strategy. So you want to identify your strategy first, and then you look at whether the market can support that strategy, and then you look at the property. So a lot of people do things in the reverse way. They look at the property first and they were like, oh, can I do this with Airbnb? Oh, can I set things up with a midterm rental? Oh, can I do this with can I do a duplex conversion for this type of property? Most people do look at property first before they think about strategy.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I lost my money in a couple projects. Okay, in the past like few years. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I got on the hype on buying a property because I thought it was a good deal without thinking through whether or not my strategy makes sense and whether or not this market can support that strategy. Okay, so people who are concerned about not being able to sell that product out to other buyer, other investors, is because you haven't really identified what strategy you're using and who you're targeting to. Because if you know who you're selling it to, you would have built that buyer list first before you lock that in, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, I think this all comes down to the knowledge and whether or not the strategic planning for our investing side can be done correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, especially because you're very right. I feel like that is what's usually missing, or that's how we've seen, let's say, especially last year, I feel like there's quite a massacre on a lot of
Yeah,
people because there was no strategy behind, or like you said, they would buy out of the FOMO and just getting things like just because they wanted to have or whatever the reasons are. And then afterwards, you're like, oh, but, or the refi. I even see the same thing with the refi. You know, they refi and they're like, oh, I'm not cash flowing anymore. And like, you didn't think about that.
yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
that should be in like you should be thinking that when you're buying it. Like, I think about it when I buy. I'm like figuring out what my scenarios are before
yeah,
I go to buy
yeah.
it. So it's just like, yeah, I feel like it's been a hard lesson for a lot of people, especially those that aren't very analytical. I feel like they struggle. I feel like you guys need to partner with analytical people because you guys stress me out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And here's the thing, also expect that you will make a wrong move as well, right, in this journey. At some point, I think all the investors can also say that, hey, that was not a good buy. We just kind of gambled on it, right? And when I say gamble, it's usually because we end up buying it on the hype, like you mentioned, FOMO. I saw
Mm,
a couple projects that I shouldn't have purchased if I follow through my investing framework and investing philosophy, right?
mhm,
Projects I just should never touched it when I was buying in 2021 and 2022, right? And
mhm,
those still happen, but I all I wanted to do is to get better and better and try to mitigate the risk and make sure that I'm reducing the wrong decision in each purchase, right? So over time, if 9 out of 10 I'm good, I have one place that I didn't place it right. Okay, those one I can either cash out, stop the loss, or I can just hold it for 2 years, 3 years. Because over time,
mhm.
it's gonna be painful. Don't get me wrong, right? But
Yeah.
then neighborhood run class, it's like, oh man, why did I do that, right?
Mhm.
But just the fact that that will still happen, and if you have the right expectation, over time you're gonna be a better investor.
Yeah, I completely agree. And everyone's gonna have exactly what you said, right? The problems they come with. Like, there's actually big players in the game right now that are actually like they also got caught in the FOMO, to be honest. You know, they got caught in the FOMO. And the thing is they are growing much bigger than, let's say, at least me. I am definitely I think I'm like an overly conservative person, and that's probably why I'm doing fine in this. But again, like let's say like this year, for example, for me, which I've been putting more emphasis on my application, but I haven't bought any property this year because I just haven't found anything that has like met my criteria.
Right.
So I'm like I'm very conservative, but there's other people that like much bigger in the game where they're like going at 100 miles an hour and they have like 20 million projects going on. And imagine out of those 20 million projects, like a third of them go wrong, or maybe more if you're especially caught in the FOMO.
Yeah.
Ooh. Some
No.
people are struggling, and you always have
Yeah.
to maintain, like there always has to, you always have to like make sure that even if you're going to go big, like there still needs to be a strategy behind it. And I feel like you're much bigger than I am. So I'm curious, like like for expansion, what kind of tips would you give for people to expand without putting themselves into such a risky situation? Because I see like some big players where it's like they got fully stuck in the FOMO and
Yeah.
also went jumped on the bandwagon.
Yeah. So investing is about being diligent, or how do you say, financially disciplined with your criteria. So like you mentioned, it is great that you can pinpoint that, hey, I'm a much more conservative person, so I haven't actually bought anything in the past year, for example, because nothing actually fit into my criteria. So I'm the same way. I started setting up a different criteria for myself because at the current stage of business, I want the active income. I don't want to continue to be so super heavily involved in the landlord tenant board, meaning I don't want my investment return to be based on tenants paying rent and LTV executed within time frame. And the reason why I said that was because my previous eviction took me 13 months. Okay, it was nuts in my opinion. It was crazy to even think about it.
We're going
So
to one also. We're going to be like exactly the 1 year
that's
mark when the court hearing comes. So let's hope maybe another couple months after that when they're actually gone.
yeah, no, and I feel like being a landlord in Ontario, where more or less we're gonna come into this type of situation, right? Come across with this type of situation. So my investing philosophy has adapted into try to mitigate that kind of risk and aggravation as much as possible. So just be completely transparent. I'm in the process of offloading smaller residential, anything duplex, triplex. I don't want to hold them long term anymore. I'm not offloading them altogether, but it's just a strategic planning. There's a couple things that doesn't make me happy because it's giving me a lot of stress. I want to offload those one first. Okay. Once I offload it, I want to reallocate the funds into either commercial real estate, which is not necessarily going to be multifamily buildings. Okay, it could be retail, office building. I'm still like hesitant about it, but that's actually where my direction is going to go. Self storage, I'm considering, but I know the operation is pretty heavy, so it's like I'm still doing a lot of due diligence and trying to make sure which one is the right asset class for me. Okay, so that's approach number one. Approach number two for moving forward for smaller residential, I want to actually allocate into the US investing. So we're doing a lot of preparation, try to understand the market, even pick and choose the right mentor or right investor that we can kind of shadow with for the time being. We're okay with doing a passive investing for the very first couple projects, just to learn the system, to learn the market analysis part. But the long-term play is going to be in the US for the next 3 to 5 years. Okay.
Mhm.
For anything smaller residential, just because we're still running an active business in here, we want to only keep the residential into a flipping model. Like, sorry, keeping the flipping model in the residential side. I don't want to be banking on that duplex or triplex that will cash flow because I'm making the assumption that the tenants are going to be paying rent, and that'll give me additional $200 per month cash flow. $200 per month cash flow is not going to do me anything. If I have issue with the HVAC system, the roof, or anything else. Yeah,
100%. And I love it actually because you made a point indirectly, which I kind of wanted to point out to everyone else, because I also do actually find this environment a great environment for new investors to come in. Because basically, we're talking about you're technically going to be a new investor going into the US market because you're now in a, not fully new, but you know what I mean? Like you're learning, you're starting from base zero and you're like, okay, what is the cities like that I want to invest in? Like, what are the strategies? Like, how is everything work over
yeah,
there? Which is, I personally find this environment a great environment for that. Like, take your time to learn and understand and be able to actually identify good deals because you actually have the time. You know, I did feel like COVID time, if you weren't experienced, you were, because there were people I was seeing when deals were amazing, like as in like you could sell amazing deals or whatever, get amazing deals, and still people were flopping on it because they didn't know how to run the numbers. And that was in the amazing times. But that was more because like, you know, no conditions. So you, if you don't know how to look at a property, let's say, and actually know like what's wrong with it, and then you close on it, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a huge structural issue or something, or some kind of something behind the walls you didn't see because you just don't know how to identify those kind of things. People in the good times were still getting screwed over, you know, and it's just like because of how quick it was. Like the good times were good for the people that I feel like had experience because I could, you know, I could move like that. I think during all of COVID, I went in with no conditions, but I came in with a team, you know, that we knew how to analyze and see properties, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like now I feel like it's really good, actually a good time for newer investors to go in because you can actually go in with conditions like that, have a mentor, they help you, teach you things about it, which I think is, I mean, you're not really a new investor, but I was just, when you said that, I was thinking that, and I just think this is a good time for that.
The thing, yeah. So number one, what I wanted to kind of chime in a little bit is that for when things are good, right? People need to like move very fast, right? And some people end up making a lot of mistakes from there. And even in a good market, they weren't able to make anything, right? That's like yeah, that's like I feel sorry for those people actually. But I guess like we've been waiting for this moment where it's buyer's market. Like if you really think about the environment that we're in, we get to learn, we get to ask questions, we get to do our due diligence slowly, and the seller will still cooperate with us. Whereas before, guess what? If you're not providing quick closing, anything less than 2 months, if you don't have a financing condition removed and inspection condition removed, they're not even going to consider your offer. So in today's environment, things are much slower. So take the advantage of this, right? Try to shorten your learning curve as much as possible. Build your deal flow at the current moment when there's not a lot of attention in the marketplace. Once you build that out and deal flow comes in, you get to fill that out, every single one of them. When the market really picks up again, now you have your deal flow, you can monetize it however you want. You can flip it, you can raise capital, you can wholesale it to another investors, right? So I'm the same way when it comes to the US. You're 100% right. I spend a lot of time learning on how to use a different software, pull the data from different counties, right? For foreclosure, pre-foreclosure, cash buyers, like how to use the software for prompt stream. But even right now, I don't. I still feel like there's so much to learn in each market because there's a war zone in the States that we definitely need to avoid, right? So the more that I think about this new area, right, I still kind of position myself as a student. I need to. I cannot be too comfortable thinking that whatever I learn and implement it in Canada, in Ontario, is going to be 100% applicable to the States. So yeah, so for that approach, I do recognize that it is a very slow time for the market. So it is a great time for me to learn as quickly as I can. So the moment that I feel comfortable, I can start pulling the trigger with tons of options out there.
100%. Yeah, I completely agree. It's just, it's an amazing time right now. I feel like everyone needs to take advantage of,
Yeah,
because exactly that, right? It's just so we can actually take the time and make sure we're making the right decisions
yeah,
and actually think, you know, you can actually think about it.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
only like that. I feel like, I mean, not only, I know that some people got lucky in COVID too, but I feel like they probably lost that money last year and this year just because the luck. Definitely the problem I feel like with luck is you don't learn from your mistakes because you're just like so happy that it, you know, you made so much money. Whereas like, you know, when you, or at least like when you lose your money, that one, those hit hard and
Yeah.
you definitely learn your lessons on those ones.
By the way, just you can only make the money within the knowledge you have in that industry. So if you make the money with luck, eventually you're gonna pay that lesson back to the market.
Mhm.
And I say this because I have a very painful experience with a stock. right? Investing in stock, I was at some point my profit was over like six figure, right? So I thought it was easy and all that stuff, and then now it's obviously negative, right? So, but that's a part of being lucky in the investment world, right? You get lucky with something because it's a trend, but I still don't know how to operate with that investing method or approach. Eventually, those profit gets split back to the marketplace. So it's same thing with anything in business, in real estate. If you get lucky, don't expect that you can get lucky forever. At some point, you're gonna learn a lesson.
Yeah, so at some point it's gonna come back.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like, so it's either put a lot of attention on what it is that you did and actually learn from it, because usually that's what it is. Like the good ones don't learn from the mistakes really, because you're just so happy you've made the money and you think, I don't think you really put much emphasis on what went wrong.
Yeah.
But then when things go wrong, and then I feel like, well, either this has also been happening a lot to a lot of people, right? It's either when things go wrong, they just disappear and never come back, and it's like failure is the result, and they don't even want to fix it, which I always say, don't do that. Like if you fail and you fail hard, you should be hardcore into there, learning exactly the problems you made, because that's like the biggest learning experience, and
Yeah.
you know you will never do it again.
Yeah.
Because it was so damaging to your like confidence, you know, and it's
Yeah.
just like those situations are kind of those ones like that is never going to happen again, and I feel like it becomes so profound that it probably will never happen again because you've learned from it. So I feel like when people get out and just like feel defeated, confidence is a zero, I
Yeah.
just kind of feel so bad. So I'm like, man, that huge learning experience and you're not taking it because now you know it hurts so much that I don't know. I don't think it'd be possible. Like if it hurts enough, you make it a non-negotiable that that will never happen to you again. Like that specific problem, obviously, because I mean, as you grow, you're always gonna hit something. But I feel like that specific problem would never happen again because you kind of know how to identify it. What are your
No,
thoughts?
I love it. I love it. If you look at a lot of like entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneur, or even like investor, right? Bigger, I'm talking about bigger name. Some people lost it all complete, like multiple times actually. They were over leveraged. They didn't strategize correctly, so they went a little too hard, and then now they're paying back their I guess
The boost.
right? Yeah. So they pay back, and then now they're at the rock bottom. But because of all the connection, all the information, knowledge that they gather already at that point, when they bounce it back, they usually 10x, 3x, or even 10, sorry, 2, 3, or 10x on their previous portfolio, right? So I as long as we don't treat that as a failure, I think we can always sort of do the compound effects on how much we can quickly scale back up. So I completely agree with you. And one other thing I want to mention is like making money is one thing, keeping money is another thing. Oh, keeping money is actually much harder than making money.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that's my thing. It's really funny, especially when you go from a 9 to 5, right? You're so used to that consistent money coming in.
Yeah.
And then like being in real estate, like I actually notice I bounce. Like either I have like for example, like right now I have lots of money, but it's sitting there doing nothing, pissing me off. Or it's all invested, but then I'm making good monthly income,
Yeah.
right? Because I have a lot of mine is actually I love private lending,
Nice.
so I say like majority of my portfolio is on the private lending side, which it's funny you said actually. You said like private lending is really big right now. I'm actually, but again, I think it's the strategies because I only do certain strategies, which I need to change. I need to learn to other private lending strategies. But yeah, so I do these ups and downs, which I don't like. 'Cause I'm such a consistent. I love consistency. Like if I could just always be nicely, consistently making money, and that's the one hard thing for me as an entrepreneur is the ups and downs for sure. Like I'm like, yay, I have money. But I'm like, but I have no monthly income. So I feel like, oh my God, my money's like slowly, getting smaller and smaller because I'm using it instead
Yeah.
of using my monthly
Yeah.
income.
Yeah.
Do you have
No,
any tips for that? Or how does your businesses go?
you mean you're in terms of the income stream
Like
or
consistency with income and things like
so
that.
my property management business is very, very consistent. Property management business I guess a business that will go against the recession, right? Because it doesn't matter what happens, landlords were all the time always in that service, right? So 2017, our business really exploded. When the real estate market kind of like crashed a little bit, a lot of people were in such a good position where we're doing leasing, we're doing project management, we're doing whatever. So those type of business were that specific business was doing very well back in 2017. Even in today's market, everybody's payroll on my team was covered by the property management business. Now the real estate sales business dropped, right? Because the sales activity hasn't been too good. So there was a lot of pivotal point with our team. Our team right now went from much bigger team to just a couple guys, right, on the team. Now with the investing side, this is the stuff that obviously we're not going too heavy in the acquisition either, right? At some point we're doing 12 and up acquisition every single year. This year we're down to 4, right? So and then last year was also 7. So it wasn't that crazy. So every year, I think because the market shift, we have a different strategy in place, and we just wanted to make sure the cash flow is consistent. As long as we can really stretch our breathing room a little bit, we can figure things out. But the main thing that a lot of people are kind of worried about or get themselves into trouble is that they don't have a couple other strategies to bring that consistent cash flow. The moment cash flow stop, you're going to have some sort of financial anxiety right away.
Yeah, I completely agree because like that for mine, like I have rental properties, but I liked, I'm kind of the same. Like my rental properties are kind of there. Like I want them to be as quiet as possible because I really don't have any interest in the whole tenanting side. Like I like the other side, like the flipping or the burning, like the problem solving part of projects is a lot of fun for me. But once the tenants are in, I'm like a long-term hold kind of person. Like I'm like, if my tenants stay there for 10 years, I'm like, I'm happy. I'm happy just because I have more fun on the other side.
Yeah.
But then like that on the private lending side, for me, it's like more than half my money's come back to me. And I'm just like, I was like, wow, that's more than half my money just disappeared, like, or my income, right?
Right.
And then it's like, oh man. And I'm like, this is not fun at all.
Sharing a little bit about that, like what's your experience with the private lending in today's market?
So so again, I'm going to say the strategies that I work on because I know that's one of my problems. So I only do things that I also do actively. So I do flipping and burring because we have a renovation business and it's easy for me to assess those kind of projects. So, and right now, like you were saying, for example, burrs, it doesn't make sense to do burrs, right? So a lot of people are just going straight into A/B lending. And to be honest, if they are going into like a private, like I would probably go into super analysis to make sure this thing, if it's going to last forever, it can last forever. Because sometimes, at least at the beginning of the year or like end of last year, people were still not realizing financing was also just difficult to get, or like the numbers they were getting. So like that, like I haven't seen a burr actually come across, to be honest, my table since last year, mid last year actually. Yeah, mid last year. And then flips are kind of like, again, it's a very expensive thing to do, right? You're closing twice if you're doing a private, right? So you have to get a really good deal. And like you said, there also has to be a buffer there to be able to sell if it goes lower, especially with interest rates going up, right? So for example, those, like I only have one flip going on right now.
Yeah.
And the other one is a burr, but it's a burr that is stuck, right? They're stuck with it. They can't refinance out. So I don't know how long they're going to have to stay with it, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, but those are the strategies that I do in the private.
So your private lending is not the guaranteed return then. It's just an equity partner for another project.
No, they're mortgages.
Oh, they're mortgages. Okay.
They're mortgages. I only do mortgages. That's all my other thing. I only do mortgages. My money is nicely secured and stay there. And for example, like that, I did a huge transition from last year, at the beginning of last year, once that huge up happened. I started converting everything. Like, this is how conservative I am. All my seconds, I was calling them back when they came back. I remember somewhere like, hey, can I renew again? I'm like, nope. I was like, I want my money back. All my seconds came back,
Mm-hmm.
and I was now only doing firsts. So,
Okay.
for example, that becomes an issue for me because I'm not like loaded with cash, right? That I could do, for example, like projects in Ontario where you're doing first. That's like quite a lot of money that you have to be putting in, right? So
Yep.
it's like all these things that have kind of like changed the way I've had to look for projects or even stuff that I can't do because, for example, like that, I'm only doing first right now,
Mm-hmm.
and because I'm just like, I don't want to lose my money.
Oh,
I'm like, this is hard-earned cash over here for me.
yeah. By the way, this is what I mean by keeping money. Sometimes more like I guess more challenging than making money because a lot of I guess okay, I'm not there yet, but I have a few contacts who are in a way better position, wealthy position, and they said the return of the capital means way more to them. They need to make sure that the return of capital is never going to be an issue, and it's okay if it's only let's say 5 or 8% of the interest, right? They're not shooting for 12 or 15% because to them they associate that kind of ROI with risks,
Mm-hmm.
right? So just that we just wanted to make sure we park it somewhere that's really safe, and then within the timeline that they say that's been promised, they can actually get the full size of capital back to them. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
diligence being a private lender needs to be a lot higher.
The what, sorry, has to be
The
higher for private lending?
due diligence.
Oh, yeah. 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 Um, I mean, I feel like it's the same, isn't it?
Uh,
I don't know. Well,
because
I at least do it the same. Maybe it's because I also get people telling me that, to be honest, I apparently like ask for a lot of information. So I kind of treat them as if it's like
I see.
my project. And I do get like a lot of information, so that could also be the thing too.
No, no. When I talk about sorry, the due diligence, I'm really talking about the operator of the project. That
The
operator,
website?
the op
Oh, the operation.
yeah, the operator of the project needs to have the capacity to actually handle that project.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, due diligence on PL is key.
right.
100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, and what was the last thing I wanted to say? Oh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, whatever. But actually, where are we at here? Oh, we're going already almost at the hour. Any final words? Any final words that you would like to tell the viewers about anything that's going on with you, or any final words, tips for the viewers that you'd like to give?
Yeah, you know what? This year, I'm focusing a lot on building the community. I was never a social media guy back then. I think we only saw testing out around like 2019, 2020. So pretty much 1 decade in after I started investing in real estate. So this year, I want to build this community as big as possible. We have a YouTube channel called Property Hustlers. We're pretty active on social media, Instagram, and then we're going to be going on multiple different podcasts just to share our experience, right? The two to three things I always want to share with other people is, especially people who are getting into real estate investing or they're trying to scale up their portfolio. Three most important skill set. Number one, deal sourcing. Get really good at doing this. Number two is the ability to raise some capital. You don't need to be raising, multiple $1 million, right? But you can start with raising maybe 150, 200K. That will really help you accelerate your investing growth. Number three will be learn how to do social media. That's the things that I'm learning back then. So yeah, three things I want to share with all the audience.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that information. If you love what Ping said, and if you love to follow him, he's going to be tagged on this, so you can follow him and see what he's up to. And if you love what we talk about, you like the show, definitely follow me too. And talk about community, I feel like I should also talk about if you guys are wanting to, like I said, because I have an application out there. It's for the real estate investing industry, and it solves two critical parts in investing, which is one is credibility and trust. It's helping to solve this in the industry, and searchability. One of the biggest problems we have, especially as people that are either wanting to go bigger or are big is we are not able to be searchable. There's no proper system that I can be like, hey, who are all the mentors? Who are the professionals? Who are all the investors in the industry that are, for example, doing flipping, doing burring, whatever it is. So this is an up and coming platform. It's up and like that. I'm going to be putting in the link if you want to register because it's something that is going to transform the way we work in this industry. And I'm so excited to have everyone come on it. It's free to join. And yeah, thanks so much, Ping. It's so awesome to have you on.
Awesome.
And thank you everyone for coming on.
Yes.
Bye,
Thanks for having me.
everyone.
Awesome.
Bye, Ping.
Okay.